faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Makes it run. Makes it run. Makes it.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pallett. Back to work Monday, and we've got stocks selling off. U.S. stocks slumping, bonds rallying as concern over the impact of that deadly virus that originated in China rattled global markets. S&P 500 index down the most in almost 4 months, lower now by 39 points, down 1.2%. The Dow is down 344 points, down 1.2%. NASDAQ down 136. That is a drop of 1.5%. 10 years up 21/30 seconds. Yield 1.61%. Gold up 0.4%. 15.77 the ounce. And crude oil retreating now by 2%. West Texas Intermediate crude 53.15 a barrel, down by 104. Again, recapping stocks lower. S&P down 39, down 1.2%. I'm Charlie Pallett, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of power continues. Once again, here's your host, David Weston.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pallett. Live from the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. 4 Katyusha rockets landed in the Baghdad Green Zone Sunday, with one hitting the U.S. Embassy, slightly injuring one person and causing minor damage to the building. We welcome now Mark Kimmett, retired U.S. Army Brigadier General and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. So, Mark, thanks so much for joining us. What do we know? Do we know any more than those initial reports over the weekend about exactly what happened at the U.S. Embassy?
Yeah, well, I actually think we're going to find out that there were more rounds that landed inside the embassy, and they may have been mortars rather than rockets. But in any case, it is clear that the Iranian-backed proxies inside the country are taking their revenge out for the killing of Mohandas, who was in the car with Qasem Soleimani. Mohandas was the head of the PMFs in Iraq, and so I would expect we're going to see more of this.
And so what is the likely U.S. response? Because in the past we've seen some escalation here, but is this a modest enough attack that we can let this one go by without sending a message of weakness?
Yeah, I think there are 3 things. Number one, we've got to make sure that the Iraqis take the lead for any response. They have the responsibility to protect the diplomatic facilities. Number 2, I think we've got to be cautious because the Iraqis have said they want to get the Americans out. And candidly, a very disproportionate response to this may, in fact, be even make it even larger calls for the Americans to get out. And 3, it may well be that the proxies are trying to do exactly that. Do a sucker play, cause the Americans to respond, and just add to the calls for the Americans to get out.
So where are we in that process, if it is a process, of asking for the Americans to come out? Because there was a vote, but as I understand, there really wasn't a quorum, and it was just one side voting to ask us to leave. And then we had a call, as I recall, from the Iraqi authorities saying, let's put together a team to talk about your leaving the country. Where is that process?
Well, as you know, the decision was made by a caretaker government, so technically it was more of a sense of the parliament rather than a demand. I think everybody's now cooled off a bit, realized that there's as much virtue as having the Americans in to provide assistance for this fight on ISIS. So I think both sides want to sit down. The Americans say, if you want to sit down and talk about us leaving, we're going to talk about everything, not simply the military, but the economic support, the financial support, so on and so forth. So I think it's a little bit in limbo right now as both sides continue to posture before we actually sit down and talk to them.
And where, if we know, is the street, so to speak? Because before all of this happened with the altercations back and forth between the United States and Iran in Iraq, we had youths in the street really asking for the government to be thrown out. In fact, that's why we have a caretaker government. Where is that? Is that died down?
Not at all. In fact, it is now inflamed even more. We saw some of the greatest protests by the secular protesters over the weekend. That is growing. And so I think in the case of the acting government, the caretaker government, they're more focused right now on the protests than they are on the issues with regards to the U.S.
And where are the clerics? And you've pointed this out to us before. You can't put them all in one bucket. But where are the clerics at this point?
Well, I think by and large, Sistani, the Grand Ayatollah, is still calling for for the government, number one, to respect the demands of the protesters, but number two, calling on both the protesters and the government to use the minimum force necessary. Unfortunately, we're still seeing incidents on the ground where protesters are being killed and injured in very, very large numbers. So it's almost as if the cleric's voice is not being heard as much as it has been in the past, or is influential, and that would be disastrous.
Fascinating. Thank you so much. You've been great at just keeping us up to date, as I hope you will. That is retired Brigadier General Mark Kimmett coming to us today. In the meantime, we want to turn back to the markets here at the end of Balance of Power. Equity markets have been selling off, of course, today on news of the continued coronavirus epidemic in China. To give us an update, welcome now Michael Regan. He is Senior Markets Editor. Welcome, Mike. Good to have you here.
Oh, thanks, David.
What's going on?
Well, it's still another big sell-off here. Benchmark index is down about 1.2% for the S&P 500, 1.5% for the NASDAQ. And it's pretty much weakness across the board. Obviously, energy is leading. We're seeing a big drop in oil prices. Technology not too far behind. Consumer staples are sort of the bright spot. They're basically flat for the day, but not a lot to really hang your hat on it for the bulls today as far as a sector to kind of get behind as a safety haven today.
So we're going into a big week of earnings, and particularly tech earnings. We've got some really big tech giants coming out. Is this a good time to have those earnings? Because maybe it'll stop some of the bears, or is it really tricky?
Possibly. I mean, I think the entire market's fixation right now is on the coronavirus. Yeah. Even the incident in Baghdad you're talking about, you hear very little about, where that would have probably been a big focus had not this coronavirus taken over. And I think, you have to think back to what the equity market was doing before this episode. It was just grinding higher and higher. I mean, it was arguably overbought on a technical basis, on a fundamental basis. It was really pricing in almost a perfect scenario where these economic green shoots we've seen really blossom into something big and good for the economy. But to me, what I think is interesting about this coronavirus, David, is the whole bull case had been, well, the manufacturing sector is weak, it's in a recession, but that consumer and that service sector in the U.S. economy are very strong. This virus is kind of pointed directly at them, if you think about it. If we do get some more cases in the U.S. And in Europe, it begs the question, will people, be afraid to get on a plane? Will they be afraid to get on a cruise, go to restaurants? Restaurants and bars, to me, are a very fascinating topic, because that's been really one of the standout points of job growth over the last decade. Something like 3 million jobs added in the last decade in just bars and restaurants. And they're jobs that can very easily be cut should tables start showing up empty because people are concerned about this. So I think, a lot of people have asked me, well, is this just an excuse to sort of take some profits here?
That is a question. Yeah.
Is the fear getting, I think it is a story about fear right now, but that fear can have a noticeable impact on the economy and earnings. So as long as we keep hearing about new cases, and if they, God forbid, start exponentially increasing like we've seen in China, I think we're going to stay weak for a while.
And let's be clear, we're early in on this thing. It all correct itself and come back strong. No question about it. At the same time, it is a reminder, as you point out, I think it's a really good point. We've relied so much on the consumer. The consumer's been there so consistently driving it up. But the consumer can change their mind if something happens. And it takes something like a coronavirus, and they can all change their minds.
Yeah, I think about sort of the phenomenon of self-quarantining. I mean, obviously China is doing it by force. But in the U.S., if people just stay home more, that service sector, those consumer numbers look a little vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. I must say, though, we've just seen a week in Davos of the great and the good getting together, and basically tells us everything's fine. Mm-hmm. And it just took one virus in China. It doesn't look quite as fine as it did last week in the Alps.
Yeah, so the biggest risks are the ones you never could have seen coming, and this is a perfect example of that.
Exactly right. Well, it's fascinating. Are there any bright spots in the market today?
Again, not really. I mean, you'll see perhaps some, biotech stocks and drug makers that might have a chance to, gain from this. But, from a sector basis, basically everything's in the red. The best you can say is, staples, real estate, utilities aren't down that much, but they're still down.
Okay, Mike Regan, thank you so much for joining us. And that does it for Balance of Power today. You know what we have coming up next? It's Bloomberg Business Week, which we always look forward to with Jason Kelly and Lucero Masser. Thank you so much for listening to Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. This is Bloomberg Radio.
That's boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run, mix it.
Listen, we know you're not here for ads, but while you're waiting for the music, cybercriminals might be waiting for you to expose your login credentials and payment information over Wi-Fi. Help keep your online activity private with Norton 360. It gives you multiple layers of protection, including secure VPN with bank-grade encryption, device security, password manager, and PC cloud backup. Go to uk.norton.com to get all-in-one protection starting at $24.99 for your first year. Terms apply. That's uk.norton.com.
I've always loved a kitchen experiment, especially smoothies. I've blended all sorts of mad combinations. Strawberry and charcoal, broccoli and chocolate. Not my best, that. But when I test blenders in the Witch Lab, it's not about flavour, it's about performance. Our tests use proper tough stuff, hard ice, strong veg, rough nuts. And the blenders that can hack it are the only ones we recommend for your kitchen.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Don't miss Super Bowl 54 because you can't watch the game on TV.
Lights in over the left guard. Touchdown.
Listen to every second of the action with your phone, tablet, computer, or connected device. All you need is a TuneIn Premium subscription.
Search Premium to upgrade today. At Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, streaming on YouTube. Welcome to Bloomberg Business Week. It is Monday, January 27th, 2020. Carol Masser, along with my co-host Jason Kelly. And safe to say, Jason, it's a tough start to the week for many reasons. We're obviously focusing on the equity market, slumping, bonds rallying, intensifying concern over the impact of the deadly coronavirus rattling global markets. We're off our lows, though, here in the U.S.
Well, and I think there's also a bit of a pall over the market, or at least sort of the professional world in many ways, with the passing of Kobe Bryant. I have to say, I think you and I were both rattled by that, along with many others. I've run into so many people this morning who said, you know, I never met him, didn't know him, and yet I'd sort of feel off about the whole thing.
And talking to some athletes in preparation for what we're doing later in the week, just talking to those who did know him and just saying, obviously, a stunning loss. They've lost a friend.
Absolutely. And someone who had so much more to do in the world off the court.
Exactly. All right, we're going to cover all of this over the next couple of hours, but front and center, certainly those markets. So let's kick things off with a check on them with Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much, Carol Masser. You mentioned well off our session lows. At one point, we had the Dow lower today by 549 points. Right now, the Dow is down 395. That is a drop of 1.4%. Stocks are slumping. Bonds are rallying as concern over the impact of that deadly virus that originated in China rattled global markets. We'll have more on that for you coming up in just a moment. S&P S&P lower now by 45, a drop of 1.4%. NASDAQ down 151 points. That is a drop of 1.6%. 10-year now up 23 seconds, yield 1.60%. Gold up 0.5%, 15.79. Big move for West Texas Intermediate crude down 2%, 53.10 a barrel. Brent crude now with a 59 handle, lower by 2.3% at 59.32 a barrel. Recapping stocks lower, S&P down 44, a drop of 1.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week here, a Monday edition. And, on the subject of Kobe Bryant, I should say, later on, we're going to play part of an interview that we were fortunate to do with Kobe back at the U.S. Open over the summer, talking about his off-the-court life, talking about his daughters, talking about the impact that he wanted to make.
But it speaks about who he is, because he was doing an interview with another organization. We just saw him and went over to his team and to him and was like, could you just give us a few minutes? And he did. And he was so gracious about it. So it says a lot, obviously, about the man, the individual, and the character of who he was. So we will certainly get to that. We've got to talk about the virus, what it means for the markets, what it means for Chinese President Xi Jinping. We have an interesting take on that from our own Andy Brown. And we'll also hear from the CEO of a major publicly held hospitality company, because he's watching this.
Well, and he's got a lot on the line as it relates to this also, and this gives it away a little bit. He has something to do with the Super Bowl coming up this week in Miami. So we're going to get to all that and much more. But first, let's set the Business Week agenda now. Sarah Ponczak is here with us, cross-asset reporter for Bloomberg, here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. And Dave Wilson, stocks editor, author of the chart and stock of the day. He's here as well. So, Sarah, break this down from a cross-asset perspective. This virus seems to be the story, right?
It absolutely is the story. And if you do break it down across asset classes, you're almost getting your textbook reaction to a risk-off event. So you see equities lower. Today, it's going to mark the first back-to-back declines for the S&P in quite a while. We did see a sell-off really start to percolate on Friday. Today, we're really seeing the feed-through coming through. At the same time, you see a bond rally. You have 10-year Treasury yields down at 1.6%, the lowest since October. Also, inversion of the yield curve, not the 2s, which is very widely watched. But if you look at the spread between the 2-year Treasury yields and 5-year Treasury yields, we do now have a portion of the yield curve that is inverted once again. And then at the same time, you look at commodities, oil selling off, the other end, gold getting a rally.
Yeah, exactly. Dave Wilson, come on in on this as well in terms of how broad-based this decline is, because we are definitely off our lows of the session. But nonetheless, what are we seeing?
Well, you're seeing all 11 of the main industry groups in the S&P 500 lower. Some of the more defensive areas of the market, the kind of stocks that you buy during periods where you're concerned about where the economy is headed, holding up relatively well. We're talking makers of consumer staples, food, beverage, tobacco, utilities, real estate, healthcare. Energy stocks are kind of at the bottom of the heap, as they've been now for some time. This is kind of aggravating what's been going on for the group, arguably with crude oil prices falling. One thing that's interesting, though, is that you had two S&P 500 companies out with earnings today. There are two of the best performers in the index. Arconic, the auto and aircraft parts maker. They have a couple things going on. The numbers for their latest quarter didn't look so great, but they're moving forward with a plan to break themselves up, as they were broken up from Alcoa a couple of years back. So you got that stock up about 5.5%. And D.R. Horton, you look at the home builders. They've done pretty darn well this year. You've got 3 of them among the 10 biggest gains in the index for 2020. And so D.R. Horton's numbers come out, the stock's up more than 2%.
Did well last year also. Those home builders really bounced back. That one alone, D.R. Horton, was up about 52%. I guess at this point, and I'm curious what you folks are hearing, Dave and Sarah, and also talking about in the newsroom, that it really just depends on containment at this point. And I think every time we feel that there's a little bit of an unknown, we get a little bit more nervous. So, Sarah, what's the conversations that you're hearing? What are the folks that you're speaking to in the financial community? What are they saying?
Right. So we constantly hear about comparison to SARS back in 2003. As it relates to containment, you could say this time around with this coronavirus, with the Wuhan virus, it's being contained in a much more proactive and better fashion. However, at the same time, if you're looking solely at market reaction, there's 2 different things that you really have to consider. One, Chinese GDP as a percentage of global GDP is much higher now. Back then, China made up about 4 to 5% of global GDP. Excuse me, global GDP.
Easy for you to
tongue
say.
twister. Now it's about 15%.
Big difference.
Right. It really does pull a much heavier weight. At the same time, Matt Maley over at Miller Tabak was pointing this out this morning. He said, sure, containment might be better this time around. The numbers are not as bad as SARS back in 2003, but you have to look at where we're coming off of. Exactly. But you also, regardless of that, have to look at where we're coming off of. In 2003, we are coming off of a market that was pretty undervalued. We are coming off of the top of the dot-com bubble. Now, you can make the case that the stock market is overvalued. We've been moving higher for so long.
Right.
So what his point was that even if we don't get to the point that we saw with SARS, this could actually potentially have a heavier reaction considering where we stand in the market cycle.
Well, and I guess that raises the question, Dave, to some extent, and I feel like we've argued this or discussed this a lot around this table, this notion of, is the market looking for a reason to sell or is it looking for reasons to buy? I mean, like, it feels like for a long time we've just been looking for reasons to buy.
It does seem that way. And, consider that we're in the middle of fourth quarter earnings and you've got this anticipation that profit is going to pick up starting in the first quarter and moving throughout 2020. So far, from what some of the analysts are saying, it looks like that's on track. The other side of it is you usually see quarterly numbers beating estimates, and so far, less than a fifth of the S&P 500 in, so it's a relatively small sample. You're not getting that, really. You still got the overall number lower, about 1.5% lower in terms of fourth quarter profit for the S&P 500. So, to have that coming at a time when you've got this sort of overarching concern about this big unknown when it comes to, how extensive the coronavirus is going to be, that's a lot to kind of work through.
I was just going to say, all of this just a reminder that things can come out, come when you just don't even expect it. And I feel like that's what the last couple of days are a reminder, the last couple of weeks. Sarah Ponczak, thank you so much. Dave Wilson, you'll be back a little bit later on. Let's do the bite of the day.
Let's do it. It's one number that tells us a lot. Today's number, 8,904. The average price for a ticket to the Super Bowl this weekend between the San Francisco 49ers and Kansas City Chiefs is $8,904.
Sarah's shaking her head on the way out.
I know. Tickets purchased through Ticketmaster, the official ticketing part of the NFL, is higher than any other year in the past 6 years, according to the company. Fascinating.
God, that's expensive.
It is expensive and a little bit surprising given that, these two teams might not usually draw. But in any case, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got world national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, now the White House defense. President Trump's lawyers are taking their turn before the U.S. Senate, and Bloomberg's Irv Chapman is live on Capitol Hill. Irv.
Bob, the Senate is hearing from Kenneth Starr, who sparked the impeachment of President Bill Clinton. He's presenting the argument that President Trump's impeachment is a partisan move to thwart policies the House Democratic majority opposes.
Instead of a once-in-a-century phenomenon, presidential impeachment has become a weapon to be wielded against one's political opponent. Like war, impeachment is hell. Or at least presidential impeachment is hell.
Starr added that impeachment should be reserved for the commission of a crime. The Clinton impeachment charged a crime, he said, and the Nixon impeachment charged numerous crimes.
Bob? Irv Chapman live on Capitol Hill. Thank you. By the way, it's a significant day for Chief Justice John Roberts, who is presiding over the impeachment proceedings. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell took note.
On behalf of all of us, happy birthday. I'm sure this is exactly how you'd plan to celebrate the day.
Well, thank you very much for those kind wishes, and thank you to all the senators for not asking for the yays and nays.
Roberts turned 65 years old today. No new cases, according to federal health officials in the U.S., of that deadly coronavirus since the first 5 patients were identified in the past week in the U.S. 32 people who were thought to be possible cases have been ruled out. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which is spearheading the American response, says it's developed plans for a test that it will share with states in order to more quickly diagnose new cases. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Financial leaders enjoy talking with Tom Keene and Jonathan Farrell.
What was it like having the giant darken the door every once in a while?
Experts appreciate it when what they have to say is understood.
Do you think that we might have seen a cyclical peak in the labour market?
It's the same reason we're recommending Bloomberg Surveillance to you.
Everything you thought would happen is happening.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesmaned the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
The Bloomberg.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time, skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run, mix it.
Hello, I'm your captain for today's Virgin Atlantic flight. Please drop everything and pay close attention to the following announcement. The sail is now on. Our crew are ready to take your bags and stresses away. The cocktails are ready to serve, the movies are loaded, and we're all set for takeoff to the Caribbean. So, take your seat in our award-winning economy class. We're ready to go when you are.
The Virgin Atlantic sail. Fly amazing for less. For more details, visit virginatlantic.com.
I think I just be myself, let it come naturally. I never try to, go outside the box.
Super Bowl 54, the biggest game of the year, is live on TuneIn Premium. Be there when the Kansas City Chiefs, dreaming of their first championship in 50 years, collide with the San Francisco 49ers' quest to bring a 6th Lombardi trophy to the Bay Area. Wherever you are when the ball kicks off Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, listen to every electric moment of Super Bowl 54 with the NFL on TuneIn Premium. Search Premium to upgrade today. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right? This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, taking the long view on prison.
In 100 years, we're not going to be locking human beings in cages, because we'll understand then, as we understand about slavery now, that it was immoral, that it just didn't work.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
A day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all retreating right now. We've got the S&P falling 39 points, lower by 1.2%. Stocks are slumping. Bonds are rallying as concern over the impact of that deadly virus that originated in China rattled global markets. S&P 500 index down the most in almost 4 months, again down now by 1.2%. Dow Industrials also down 1.2%, lower by 345 points. The NASDAQ Composite Index tumbling 136 points. That is a drop of 1.5%. We've got the 10-year up 22.30 seconds. The yield now 1.60%. Gold rallying 0.5%, 15.79 the ounce. While crude oil selling off today, West Texas Intermediate now tumbling 2.3%. WTI below $53 a barrel, 52.93. Brent below 60 at 59.12 for a barrel of Brent. That is a drop right now of 2.6%. Again, the China virus sending U.S. stocks lower on this Monday, with the S&P 500 index slumping 40 points, a drop of 1.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol?
So, Jason, of course, we know we are focusing on what's going on with the virus. The U.S., what's happening here, may expand travel screening at some of its borders or at its borders, closely also monitoring 110 people to stop the spread of that deadly virus that's killed at least 80 in China. At least that's by, I think, my last check. And it's appearing around the globe from Singapore to Paris. Global markets, as we know, rattled by the virus. We just talked about it. Let's get into, though, some of maybe the more significant market implications, especially if this should endure. Peter Cheer is back with us, head of macro strategy at Academy Securities. Peter's on the phone from New Canaan, Connecticut. Peter, always nice to check in with you. Better if it was that we weren't talking about a virus that is killing people. How do you assess this at its current state? And do you believe that we're kind of getting true numbers out of China?
You know, I think that's the biggest problem that we're all facing right now is you can see some, reports on what this could all mean, but we don't know that we're getting true numbers. I think there would be a little bit more calm if the numbers that were coming out of somewhere else. Basically, I think most people disbelieve that China was early enough on this, that China's doing enough, and that the reported cases are all the cases out there. And that's causing a lot of the angst.
And so, as a market guru, how do you read this? And you always have such great institutional and historical views of this. Peter, what is this like? What does it feel like? What comparisons should we be making here?
I think that a lot of people are talking what it looked like versus SARS and versus even Ebola. I think those comparisons aren't quite right. I think, Ebola was a different type of virus and how it worked, and SARS was so long ago, I don't know that you quite had that, travel, that ease of travel that we see now, and this long incubation period. So it's probably a little bit different than anything we've seen. Having said that, I think when you take a step back, the death rate so far, at least the reported ones, it doesn't seem to be that bad. I think we all kind of forget just how many people get killed by the flu. So there's a lot of reason, I think, to be optimism. The one article I went back to a lot and told a lot of clients to read was, this, to be honest, was from The Economist back in 2002, and it was after the sniper attacks, and it talked about the illogic or the logic of irrational, concerns. So I do think we want to make sure we don't get carried away here. So I've been talking to clients, spending some money to buy puts, put some small hedges on, but not to panic at this stage.
Having said that, Peter, based on the trading activity Friday, and I totally understand why people wouldn't want to maybe take a bullish position ahead of the weekend, but seeing some of the selling again today, what does it tell you about kind of the market sentiment? Are investors at this point looking for a reason to sell?
I think investors were looking for a reason to sell. I think right now most people are looking for a reason to stay. VIX, I think, hit 19 overnight. It's back to a 16 handle. I think most people, just from a sanity standpoint, want this not to be a big issue. So I think there would be a lot of relief not to see this develop. I think you've seen a lot of hedges put on, and people are watching and hoping that this ends so that they can go back and rebuy this market. I think the market was, doing quite well into this. That's what people are looking for. I don't sense a lot of fear or concern away from this specific issue.
Right. And how much of that do you think, Peter, has to do with the fact that it looked like we saw the market, which is still down. The U.S. markets are still down, but it seemed to take at least a tick up earlier when there was a report saying that, the U.S. exposure has been minimal so far. The cases that no new diagnosed cases that this is quote unquote contained in China, even though that's a massive country. What do we need to see in terms of the spread, either geographically or the depth of it, that would sort of rattle people further, do you think?
I think people are going to be very careful watching what goes on this week, right? Mm-hmm. They're talking about an incubation period as long as 14 days. So I think even if we see a couple days of good data, everyone's going to really want to, pardon the expression, but hold their breath until they see a real sustained stoppage of this. The other thing I do think would be really important is to see that people with proper medical attention can come through this, and that the mortality rate is very low, because the mortality rate in China is reasonably high. But again, I'm not sure anyone trusts the medical system in China there. So that could be another thing that really stops the fear, is seeing people who are hospitalized outside of China actually, come through. That would be a big relief.
So, Peter, you mentioned premium puts at this point in terms of the market environment. Once we get beyond this, and let's cross our fingers, hope that we do get, quickly it's contained and it doesn't get any worse. What's the trade then? What's the trade you're thinking about after this?
Coming into last week, even before this, I thought the Fed was going to disappoint a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I was actually slightly bearish on equities, which that turned out okay, but I was also bearish on treasuries. I thought yields would go a bit higher. Mm-hmm. That's obviously been, the wrong way. So those things have kind of balanced themselves. I think if we get back to looking at the economy and the Fed, and this passes us by, I think you look for higher yields and moderate growth in stocks, but nothing exceptional. I think people are going to have to reconsolidate and see what higher yields means. I still like Europe better, and away from that, we're just really trying to make sure that this does come through, because otherwise I think you're going to see a lot of pressure on oil prices, commodities. Right. So I've seen a little bit of the other side of the hedge is to buy very domestic-focused companies.
Got it.
All right. Great to catch up with you, Peter Cheer. Always great context. We really appreciate it. Head of macro strategy for Academy Securities. He joined us on the phone from New Canaan, Connecticut. I mean, his point is so right that we need a few days to sort of look at this. People need to either get home or get where they're going to be. The Lunar New Year, I think, is still an issue out there in terms of...
Because the Chinese market's closed.
Yeah, the Chinese markets are closed. They've extended the vacation for a lot of schools. So, I was talking to a lot to expats over the weekend about this. So, still a lot of big questions out there.
Containment, I think that's what it's going to come down to. Coming up next, we've got one of our most read stories on the Bloomberg. It has to do with debt problems and the fitness industry. Stick around. We'll have the details on that in just a moment.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Chip makers, casinos, cruise lines, and other travel companies are taking some of the hardest hits on Wall Street as investors look to get out of investments in companies with close links to China, where authorities are struggling to control the spread of the coronavirus. The stock averages are lower by about 1 1/3 to 1.5%. The Dow falling 376, the Nasdaq 145, the S&P 43 points. An RBC Capital Markets money manager says this is to be expected. The markets were ripe for a pullback with the right reason. Plans for a major merger in the food industry are getting a government once-over. Dow Jones reports federal antitrust regulators are looking into the deal between Dean Foods and the Dairy Farmers of America, the largest U.S. dairy co-op. Dean is the biggest milk processor by sales. It's the co-op's biggest customer. Farm groups have raised concerns about whether the merger would lead to a concentration of milk buyers in parts of the country. Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Welcome back to the Dog Show. Up next, we have Satchmo. Satchmo is a member of the Shelter Pet Group.
That's right, a group known especially for their couch-snuggling, ball-chasing, face-licking, and, of course, companionship. Now, let's see him in action. Look how he makes eye contact with his person. That's actually known as the treat stare.
How intuitive. And now he appears to be excitedly turning in circles.
Ah, the happy dance so common with this group.
But really, the best way to know an amazing shelter pet like Satchmo is to meet one.
Visit theshelterpetproject.org today. Adopt.
Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. What if you...
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run, mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time, skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Welcome to whatever this is.
Introducing Sky Comedy, the new home of U.S. comedy. We've got a great lineup of brand new shows like Miracle Workers with Steve Buscemi and Daniel Radcliffe, and The Righteous Gemstones with Danny McBride and John Goodman.
Praise be to He.
We've got talk shows straight from the U.S. like The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon.
What are you talking about?
Ballers and Curb Your Enthusiasm are back with new seasons. This is Sky Comedy, the brand new home of U.S. comedy. Funny every damn day.
Treat yourself.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, taking the long view on prison.
In 100 years, we're not going to be locking human beings in cages. Because we'll understand then, as we understand about slavery now, that it was immoral, that it just didn't work.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
I think I just be myself, let it come naturally. I never try to, go outside the box.
Super Bowl 54, the biggest game of the year, is live on TuneIn Premium. Be there when the Kansas City Chiefs, dreaming of their first championship in 50 years, collide with the San Francisco 49ers' quest to bring a sixth Lombardi trophy to the Bay Area. Wherever you are when the ball kicks off Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, listen to every electric moment of Super Bowl 54 with the NFL on TuneIn Premium. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Cutting for the end, score! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. The Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 1061 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Carol, we're going to take a break from the virus talk for a few minutes to, maybe work it out a little bit and go to an area of the market both you and I are very interested in and is of huge interest right now, the fitness market, but the debt side, a little tricky.
This is among our most read stories, so we'll get to all the details in just a moment. Let's get back, though, to details on some of your top business stories and an update on the trading sell-off. Here is Charlie Pellet.
Hi, thank you very much. Well off our session lows, but red on the screen. Down Monday here with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all slumping at the worst level of the day. We did have the Dow Jones Industrial Average down roughly 550 points. Right now I'm looking at a loss on the Bloomberg of 338 points. That is a drop of 1.2%. We've got the S&P lower now by 38 points, down 1.2%. And NASDAQ is slumping 130 points, a drop there of 1.4%. As for the why, a topic we have been talking about all day long and also right through the weekend here on Bloomberg, stocks slumping, bonds rallying as concern over the impact of that deadly virus that originated in China is rattling global markets. Carl Weinberg is chief economist at High Frequency Economics.
Still, we really don't know where this is going. A couple of thousand cases in a nation of 1.4 billion people is not a huge penetration. We don't know the real medicine behind the disease and whether it's going to spread and how it's going to spread.
Indeed, consumer stocks with exposure to China are trading lower. Starbucks, McDonald's, Domino's Pizza all declining. At Guggenheim, an analyst says of the three American restaurant chains, Starbucks is the most exposed to the outbreak. Starbucks shares, they are tumbling now by 3.1%. We've got McDonald's down 0.5%. Domino's Pizza, it is down by 0.2%. Travel stocks also hit hard today. For example, American Airlines dropping 5.8%. The 10-year up 21.30 seconds with a yield of 1.60%. We've got gold up 0.5%, $15.79 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude dropping 2%, $53.08 a barrel. So again, recapping here, the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all lower. S&P down 40 points, a drop of 1.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Yes, indeed. Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week, live on Bloomberg Radio and on YouTube, and this is Bloomberg.
All right, so I'm pretty sure that when you and I were reading in this morning, this was a no-brainer.
I know,
we were going to, regardless of what's going on in the world, we're going to talk about this story. And as you mentioned a couple minutes ago, Carol, that even amid everything that's going on in the world, our customers are reading this story pretty fervently. Totally. It's all about the gym business. I'm just going to read the headline. Gym chains wrestle with debt even as fitness industry is growing. Kat Doherty, she wrote it. She's here with us, our high-yield distressed debt and bankruptcy reporter. All right, I'm obsessed with this story. Tell us what you found here.
So it's interesting. Memberships are at an all-time high. We have tons of folks running to the gym. They're getting in their post-New Year's resolutions, trying to fulfill what they've committed to. So the fitness industry is thriving, but there are some middle market players that are struggling as we see consumers shift from one end of the market, the high-end boutique expensive options, or the lower-end cheaper options.
Right.
So it's those in the middle, what we might consider the traditional gym players, that are trying to fit into these shifts. And amidst all of that, they have a lot of debt on their balance sheet, and they're having to pay off their borrowings. And when they have these obligations that are coming due, they need to also retain their members, and they're having trouble doing so.
And there's one name in particular that I want to make sure you talk about, because it's Town Sports International, and that's New York Sports Club and Boston Sports Club and others, very familiar to our listeners and viewers viewers here, they really are, and they've been stuck for a while in this like no man's land, right? In the middle. Tell us about that name.
Right, exactly. So, as you said, Boston, Philly, Washington, D.C., these are some major markets, mostly on the East Coast, but really all over. So they have been stuck. However, recently there was an announcement which is shifting the narrative. And that announcement was that New York Sports Club has proposed to acquire the cycling studio Flywheel. And that is a boutique fitness, as we have talked about, the differentiator.
Competitor to SoulCycle, sort of an agro SoulCycle.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And they also have Fly Bar. Yeah. So it's like a fitness kind of craze that's fitting within that niche
sort of
market.
A boutique platform almost that they have. Yeah.
Exactly. So this acquisition would put Town Sports or New York Sports Club on that map of the niche, capturing those either new members or having their existing members sign up and pay a higher cost in order to have access to Flywheel.
So they need it, bottom line.
It would help. Is I think what
in terms of attracting members and
members, retaining new new members, retaining existing members, not losing existing members. Right. But it also on the debt side, this whole acquisition proposal would refinance their loan that's coming due in November. So it's an impending
gives them a longer window now.
Gives them a longer. It would push out the maturity by 4 years. Otherwise, this comes due this year, and that is a big question mark for the company. How do they pay it off? How do they come to an agreement with their lenders? Now, the lenders do have to approve this acquisition, but they're getting support. The company's getting support from Kennedy Lewis, who's the owner of Flywheel.
Right. Well, and I love this element to the story because, and I have thought a lot about this over the years, this notion that, the boutiques are able to command, as you alluded to, a much higher premium, essentially, for their product. And, these monthly memberships, while the business model is attractive, the sort of set it and forget it, like, you're sort of paying your monthly dues, they are in sort of a race to the bottom, right, in terms of the monthly fees.
Exactly. I was talking to a fitness fanatic, and it was fascinating. She pays $70 a month for a gym out in Long Island, and she also pays $36 per class for SoulCycle.
Right.
And what's really like the differentiator that stood out to me here is that $36 she pays individually. That's not a recurring cost.
Right.
So she signs up for this class and she says, charge my card. Next class, charge my card. She does 2 of these a week. And so that requires thought. It requires commitment. And you just develop this following where people want to do that. Whereas with gyms, you just have your card on file, and every month, just like your cable bill or another recurring bill, your Netflix, it just gets charged to your card and you say, oh, I've used this enough or I haven't. But otherwise, those other companies, they're relying on the tribalism is a word that has been used, or the following of people that are religiously on Sunday nights signing up for these classes and recharging whatever card they have on file.
Also, maybe a sign that just, too many new entries or too much stuff out there. I keep hearing this about that everybody's competing for everyone's time, and there's a lot of selection out there.
Well, and next week, I believe we're going to hear from Peloton for their latest earnings. So a lot to dig into there. Kat Doherty, great story.
Terrific.
It's all about gym chains and debt and what may happen next in the fitness business. Coming up, we're going to talk a little bit about the area around Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, the real estate there. A little bit of a twist. You might be surprised by what we have to say, or we'll get to that in a moment. Now let's get to World and National News headlines and Bob Moon.
Carol, he was going after corruption, not personal political gain. So say President Trump's lawyers, who told the Senate today that Trump was motivated by the desire to combat Ukrainian corruption when he held up military aid to that country. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman is live with the latest from Capitol Hill. Irv.
Bob, lawyer Jay Sekulow said the president was insisted that U.S. foreign aid be reviewed to be sure it would not be diverted by corrupt officials, and that's why he paused the aid to Ukraine.
The security assistance flowed without Ukrainian government announcing any investigations. President Trump, in reality, strategically, has been the best friend and supporter of Ukraine, certainly in our recent history.
The lawyers also said the president was pressing European allies to send more aid to Ukraine. Bob?
Irv Chapman live on Capitol Hill, thank you. Did the pilot of Kobe Bryant's helicopter lose sight of the danger? Foggy conditions at the time of yesterday's tragic crash crash were considered dangerous enough that local police agencies grounded their choppers. But aviation safety expert John Cox says it seems roads and landmarks were visible.
When you listen to the conversations between air traffic control and the pilot, it was clear that the pilot could see the roads below him, both the 101, the 118, and the 5. And so he had visual reference to the ground.
Investigators are working on a hillside outside Los Angeles where the helicopter crashed, killing Bryant, his daughter, and 7 others. Global News, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich? No. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seizechange.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex...
Boredom, fitness enemy number 1. So don't just run. Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time, skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class, skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run.
Mix it. Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre. So expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Welcome to whatever this is.
Introducing Sky Comedy, the new home of U.S. comedy. We've got a great lineup of brand new shows like Miracle Workers with Steve Buscemi and Daniel Radcliffe, and The Righteous Gemstones with Danny McBride and John Goodman.
Praise be to He.
We've got talk shows straight from the U.S. like The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon.
What are you talking about?
Ballers and Curb Your Enthusiasm are back with new seasons. This is Sky Comedy, the brand new home of U.S. comedy. Funny every damn day.
Treat yourself.
Don't miss Super Bowl 54 because you can't watch the game on TV.
Nice hit over the left guard. Touchdown.
Listen to every second of the action with your phone, tablet, computer, or connected device. All you need is a TuneIn Premium subscription.
Search Premium to upgrade today.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations,
live commercial-free news,
and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game.
Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
On this week's On the Media, fearing restrictive laws from the new Democratic majority in Virginia's capital, gun owners demonstrate and whisper about armed rebellion.
And they were using a different term, boogaloo, which is this semi-ironic online term for civil war, and talking about, like, does the boogaloo begin in Virginia?
Don't miss this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
Then breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We're repeating a developing story. The U.S. State Department now says people should reconsider travel to China in light of the deadly coronavirus that has killed at least 80 in China and is appearing around the globe from Singapore to Paris. The U.S. says it may also expand travel screening at its borders and is closely monitoring 110 people to stop the virus. U.S. stocks, they are moving lower right now with the S&P down 385 points, a drop of 1.3%. The S&P is down 44, also lower by 1.3%. And NASDAQ is down 150 points. That is a drop of 1.6%. 10 years up 22.30 seconds, yield 1.60%. Gold up 0.6% right now, $15.80 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude slumping 2% now, $53.08 a barrel. WTI down by 1.1%. So again, repeating the top story, the U.S. now advising citizens to reconsider travel to China because of the virus. S&P down 44, a drop of 1.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
So real estate sales have never been better on Palm Beach, except, well, for a little cluster of about 10 mansions within a half mile of President Trump's private club. Is there a connection? That's what we want to get into, and that's exactly what the magazine gets into this week. It is the opener to Pursuits. James Tarmy, writer of Business Week, he wrote it. He's here along with Joel Weber, editor of Bloomberg Business Week, both in our Interactive Brokers studio. We had some fun with you. We talked with you earlier. I want to know, like, what happened, Joel? Did, like, James come to you? And
I had nothing to do with this. It was all...
He's so charming, so much fun. He said,
and his brilliance.
I have to go to Florida to do this story.
So it just was literally a thing that popped out of this guy's head, and I was like, yes, do it. But how did it pop into your head?
Well, the thing is that Palm Beach has had a series of these crazy record sales. And so all you have to do is look at Zillow, and you see this real kind of sea of red dots clustered around something. And I was trying to figure out what it was, and I realized, oh my God, it's Mar-a-Lago. And then it went from there.
And why is Palm Beach so hot?
Well, one might speculate that it has to do with the income tax rate of Florida itself, which is 0%.
Yeah, there's that.
There's that. And then there's the fact that Palm Beach is has been a desirable place for the last 100 years. It's been a vacation destination. And so when you combine the fact that a lot of people are trying to move to Florida and the people who are moving are very wealthy, Palm Beach is a natural place to go.
And how long has it been this hot?
Not very, actually. At the beginning of the year, everyone was really concerned about Palm Beach kind of as a market. And then starting in the summer, sales just took off in a way that really no one could anticipate. And so if you actually go below this cluster around Mar-a-Lago, you can drive for a mile and there is not a single house for sale. And then you hit and there's an absolute halo. And if you haven't been to Palm Beach, it's really difficult to overstate how small a place this is. I mean, you can stand on one side and see the other side.
It's not an endless supply of homes.
No, it's not. And they really have been flying off the market. A Q4 report for 2019 from Douglas Elliman said that luxury houses above $10 million on average spent around 190 days on the market. And that's nothing. That's nothing for anywhere. Flying off the shelf.
And so what did you tell us about maybe some of these places and what's new and different or special about them?
Well, one of them is the proximity to something.
So what do real estate folks say? Is there a connection that people don't want to be living right next to Mar-a-Lago?
Okay, well, the caveat is that, well, first of all, no one blamed Trump. Secondly, a couple of people astutely pointed out that no one would show up to an open house next to Mar-a-Lago and talk about how they didn't want to buy a house next to Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
So
go figure.
Yeah. So the sample pool is somewhat skewed in terms of people who had no problem with Mar-a-Lago. That said,
Nobody took you aside, said James. Well, here's what's really going on.
Certainly not. But frankly, there's nothing wrong with these houses. That's the thing. They're like all of the other houses. They're, Palm Beach traditional, which means like a lot of floral prints, a lot of pineapples, a lot of kind of like bright pink bedspreads.
Who's the interior designer who did one? Is it Lita Leto, Austin Foster?
Yes. And she's very famous within that community, and also a certain Park Avenue strata who all love heavy drapery.
So, the skeptic in me here thinks, okay, we've got a neighbor who's noteworthy and a ton of nearby listings that aren't selling. And when you look at the map of this thing, we're talking like it's a stretch that's like 1,000 feet wide, and the cluster of homes is just like packed in here. So we're like right next to Mar-a-Lago. But maybe a reason that it's not selling is, hey, you've got this really noteworthy neighbor all of a sudden, and the houses are too expensive?
So that is not just speculation on your end. A couple of people have also made the same point, which is that it might not be that people dislike Trump per se, but Trump doesn't necessarily carry the weight that some sellers are hoping that he will. So they're hoping that there's some sort of celebrity halo that impacts the value of their home, and they're discovering, well, in fact, no, not at all.
You do get the initiation fees waived, right?
Right. So it's
a big deal.
Well, right. So there's one street called Woodbridge, which is directly adjacent to Mar-a-Lago. And in the 90s, when Trump was trying to get Mar-a-Lago turned into a private club, he waived the initiation fee, which at the time was like $20,000 for anyone who buys a house on Woodbridge. The catch is that when you sell the house on Woodbridge, you are also removing your membership of the club.
Goes with the house, with the property.
Stays with the house.
And you still have to pay for annual dues and everything on top of it.
Which are actually pretty negligible. The real hurdle is, first of all, there aren't many spaces left in Mar-a-Lago since recent developments have made membership slightly more attractive to a certain group of people. And so because the Woodbridge people are leaving, you're basically grandfathered in and you get in, which to someone who cares is exciting.
Yeah.
So what do you think happens next you got to know this real estate market down there, like Mar-a-Lago adjacencies aside, this market shows no signs of slowing down, as you alluded to, right?
Well,
more broadly,
that would definitely be the glass half full approach to it. The other aspect of it is that people in Palm Beach trade a lot.
Yeah,
but there is a finite number of lots, especially in the so-called billionaires row. And once people are moving down there, they're not going to be flipping real estate. Yeah. Especially that level of real estate all too often. So there's definitely a line of thought that says that these mega properties are actually going to kind of remain a little bit more static.
And what kind of feedback did you get since the story published?
Well, certain people seem to feel that it was in fact about Trump, and that even though we explicitly said everyone says it has nothing to do with Trump, that didn't really seem to land.
And final question from me. So there's a lot of fancy places that are on the market that you got to see. Which one would you double down on if you were buying?
That is a phenomenal question, and I have to say that there were two, and they're both in this little cul-de-sac called Regent's Park. I would do 500 Regent's Park. It's on the Bayside. It's lovely.
See, and I thought you were going to say Mar-a-Lago because you just walked in like nobody cared. You just walked right in. The security was a breeze. No security.
Yeah,
saying.
5 stars.
Yeah.
All right, it's a great read and really some nice real estate to spend some time with. James Tarmy is a writer for Pursuits. He joined us in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio along with Joel Weber. He's the editor of the magazine. Coming up, check out the world of economics.
Yep, we'll get to that in just a moment. You're listening and watching Bloomberg Business Week.
That saying,
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run.
Mix it. Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I'll read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading on this sell-off Monday here, and the selling is intensifying. Keep in mind, at the worst level of the day, we had the Dow Jones Industrial Average down 550 points. Right now, I'm looking at a drop of 402 points on the Bloomberg. Stocks are slumping. Bonds are rallying as concern over the impact of that deadly virus that originated in China rattled global markets. Here's where we stand. The Dow down 411 points. That is a drop now of just about 1.4%. S&P 500 index down 46, a decline there of 1.4%. And the NASDAQ Composite Index down 159 points. That is a drop of 1.7%. So the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all declining. We've got the 10-year up 23.30 seconds with a yield of 1.60%. Tony Crescenzi is portfolio manager at PIMCO.
Big question that investors have to ask is to what extent is demand being destroyed versus delayed? Certain demand for goods and services will have been destroyed, for example, travel to certain places or a cup of coffee on a particular day. But certain other consumption and investments will simply be delayed, and there'll be an increase or acceleration in economic growth at some point.
And we've got more on the economy as well as the Chinese economy coming up for you in just a moment. The U.S. State Department is saying this past hour citizens should reconsider travel to China in light of the deadly coronavirus that has killed at least 80 people there and is appearing around the globe from Singapore to Paris. Credit Suisse Group, UBS, and Citigroup all telling their Hong Kong staff to work from home for 2 weeks if they have just visited mainland China as global banks step up their response to the outbreak of the deadly coronavirus. According to RBC estimates, Swatch, Richemont, and Burberry are the stocks most exposed to the impact of the virus that prompted Chinese authorities to curb travel for over 40 million people. Well, on a down day for the rest of the market, shares of D.R. Horton are advancing today after earnings. D.R. Horton up now by 2.5%. We've got gold up 0.6%, $15.80 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 2.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
It is time for Business Week Economics. Joining us right here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, Vince Signorella, Global Macro Strategist at Bloomberg News, along with Yelena Shaletyeva, our Senior U.S. Economist at Bloomberg Economics. Vince, I got to start with you here. We're definitely off our lows of the session when it comes to the equity market trade. A little bit of a leg down in the last half hour or so, but again, not as bad as it was earlier. What are you guys blogging about? What are you guys writing about? What are you hearing about?
Well, traders took a little bit of solace. They embraced the news from the CDC press conference this morning, said there were no new cases reported in the U.S., feeling that perhaps, probably a little bit of a stretch, but perhaps the spread of the virus is slowing. The other side of the coin is, and the pessimistic view is, we don't believe the economic numbers that come from China, so we're not really believing these. And the worry,
it's worse.
Meaning the worry is that it's significantly worse than we're hearing.
You flagged that, did you, to us, I thought, last week.
And their guys are really, getting their arms around that today. So we'll see.
It's a little bit of a wait-and-see mode.
Absolutely. There's nothing we can do
about it, yeah.
And has your view of this, Yelena, changed you guys in the desk as you try and ascertain the sort of economic impact? Because, effectively, like closing borders, or at least regional borders, does presumably start to play through at some point. I know it's a lag, but I do wonder how you think about it.
Well, the biggest concern, I think, in terms of the impact on the economy, on the Chinese economy, is extending that holiday.
Right.
And
the Lunar New Year holiday.
The Lunar New Year holiday. And that would probably have the major impact, in terms of data collection, in terms of how this affects the service sector of the economy. So one of the things our team is looking at is how much the share of services in the Chinese economy has increased since the SARS virus back in 2003. So that makes a significantly bigger proportion of the economic activity right now. So, and that makes it more potentially more prone to an impact, to a larger impact this time.
Yeah, it is kind of a wait and see, right, to some extent, but I do wonder about the numbers. It makes me a little bit nervous. And if we talk about, green swans, black swans, what have you, swans, I feel like this could be potentially something. But again, it's kind of a wait and see until we know some more significant numbers, unfortunately, if it escalates.
Yeah, and what it does is it delays, any plans for investment companies may have wanted to accelerate due to the ending of the trade war, at least the start of potential future negotiations. It kind of puts it all on the back burner again. The positive that came out of the CDC CDC press conference today was that they noted that the survival rate of the virus on surfaces was very, very short. Something I think in the neighborhood of 9 hours.
So it doesn't live long.
It doesn't live long, and so any packages that might be imported, in terms of the manufacturing from China, should not dampen appetite for that. So that is a slight positive for global growth. At least that part of the economy should not suffer greatly.
All right, so let's talk economic news. It's a Fed week, and isn't it crazy? It's like the first time I mentioned it all day today, that we do have our first Fed meeting of the year.
Well, because Peter Cheer, when we were talking to him earlier, he was like, I was rocking into this week, thinking about this week, thinking, let's see what the Fed does, more negative on what they may do. Yeah, exactly, Super Bowl, etc. But there is a Fed meeting. It's expected that not a whole lot is going to happen. Andrew Husby, your colleague, was telling us about that on Friday, but what's the read here?
So the biggest focus is on the press conference. There will be a lot of different questions, probably also with respect to the virus and the impact on the economy. So watch for Chair Powell and see how he responds to that question. But I think the focus is really on broader themes like the balance sheet developments, whether what the Fed is right now doing is QE or not QE, whether they are going to finally introduce the standing repo market facility, how they are going to modify the dot plot, what they are doing in terms of communication, and how they are preparing for the next crisis, not right now, but when the crisis actually comes, when the recession hits, what are the tools? So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes right now.
Vince, I do wonder, we have a conversation coming up with Hard Rock CEO Jim Allen, and we talked about a bunch of things, including, their hospitality company opening up hotels around the globe. So we talked to him a little bit about the virus impact. He had some, I don't want to give it away, but some interesting thoughts on the economic outlook. And I do wonder, are we hearing folks just saying the cycle has gone on too long? We've got to expect some kind of downturn. I'm just curious if there's any momentum among some of the folks that you talk to that people are starting to say we're going to have a downturn. Boom and bust still exists.
The conversation is definitely taking place, and one of the keys now is, I think where the conversation has shifted is that what we saw for the last 10 years as markets trading on liquidity from central banks isn't necessarily going to be the case going 10 years forward. And that looking forward, earnings really are going to have to be more the key. Now, the sideline of that is if this continues, the PBOC may do things in terms of adding liquidity that the markets don't expect, which could add to equity gains. So I don't think I think we're looking at potentially the wrong central bank at this point. It's not going to be the Fed. It probably won't be the Bank of England. Unlikely to be the ECB. If it comes from anywhere, it'll come from China to probably try to stimulate growth that's being dragged down by this virus.
Just want to mention a quick headline crossing the Bloomberg terminal. This is involving Boeing, and Boeing apparently securing over $12 billion in financing. This is coming from CNBC. Stock is definitely off its lows of the day. We've seen
on the move upward.
Yeah, it's now still down about 1.8%, but definitely off its lows. And Boeing's a big thing in terms of the economy.
Absolutely. So speaking about Boeing, we will get some data tomorrow morning, durable goods report, which will potentially tell us how much of an impact does this thing is having on the economy, and then how much it was already a burden back in 2019, and potentially how much it will impact economic growth this year.
All right. Our thanks, as always, Yelena Shalecheva, Senior U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics, and Vincent Signorella, Global Macro Strategist for Bloomberg. Coming up, we're going to talk more about the Chinese side of this, exactly to Vince's point, what their reaction may be and what's at stake for President Xi. First, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got world national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, a simple explanation from President Trump's lawyer today for the long-delayed White House summit with the new leader of Ukraine. The latest on the president's impeachment defense, live from Capitol Hill now on Bloomberg's Irv Chapman. Irv.
Bob, Mike Purpura, deputy White House counsel, said President Zelensky of Ukraine was one of a number of foreign leaders President Trump was trying to cram into a busy schedule, complicated by his canceling an overseas trip to deal with hurricane relief.
A bilateral meeting between President Trump and President Zelensky was planned in Warsaw, without the Ukrainians saying a word about investigations. As it turned out, President Trump was not able to attend the meeting in Warsaw because of Hurricane Dorian.
That Zelensky has yet to set foot in the White House is meaningless, the lawyer said, because he did meet President Trump during a United Nations session. Bob?
Herb Chapman live on Capitol Hill, thank you. A drastic escalation in fighting between the Saudi-led military coalition and Houthi rebels in Yemen has killed and wounded hundreds of people over the past week. That word from regional officials and tribal leaders today. And it seems the magic of Baby Shark runs in the family. Don't bother thanking me. That de facto anthem for the Washington Nationals during their World Series run last year gave its producer a $125 million fortune. Now it seems his uncle, Kim Chang-soo, is doing even better. His family has a 54% stake in a company that struck a deal to sell Major League Baseball branded clothing, bags, and caps in China. And the South Korean family now has an estimated net worth of roughly $1 billion. Global News 24 hours a day. I'm Bob Moon.
1858, the first transatlantic cable brings news of Europe.
We have the US tariffs on European goods. Would you be standing ready to buy UK domestic stocks now?
It works for 3 weeks. Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
You are expecting an end to uncertainty.
It works every time.
What are you looking for in the event of a deal?
There are a confluence of factors.
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
The market's in focus.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Mix it up, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Look at that. A riveting quest. A glorious opportunity. A scratch card.
Yet he remains unfazed by the challenge, wavering at nothing.
Miss, please keep it down. We're in the quiet area.
Sorry. Here we are. The moment of truth. As he reaches...
Instant excitement with scratch cards from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Search Dream Big, Play Small. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Why would anyone shop at TK Maxx? I don't have the time.
Well, you can still look fine, 'cause there's big brand deals at TK Maxx online.
Ooh, TKMaxx.com.
Ridiculous possibilities are here to stay when you TK Maxx the right way.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Hand off Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
On this week's On the Media, fearing restrictive laws from the new Democratic majority in Virginia's capital, gun owners demonstrate and whisper about armed rebellion.
And they were using a different term, boogaloo, which is this semi-ironic online term for civil war, and talking about, like, does the boogaloo begin in Virginia?
Don't miss this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast from WNYC Studios on TuneIn today.
On the goal line, scores! It takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellett. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ very much in retreat on this Back to Work Monday. Let's head right over to the First Word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
Good afternoon, Charlie. That's right. U.S. stocks under pressure again today on the coronavirus worries. Dow's currently down 379 points. S&P's dropped 44, and NASDAQ is lower by 153. The U.S. 10-year yield drops to 1.6%. Gold is trading higher by 9. Small caps sink 10 points, and all of the main 11 S&P sectors are trading lower, led by losses in energy and tech. Nasdaq Biotech's fall 15 points. Transports decline 242 points. Semis sink 4%, and the VIX is trading higher by 21%. Leaders to the upside in the Dow, Pfizer, Walmart, and Procter & Gamble, while Intel, Caterpillar, and American Express led to the downside. After earnings, homebuilder D.R. Horton traded to a record. Regarding deals, Morgan Stanley said that Xerox may have to raise the HP bid by $4 a share. And in other news, CNBC reported that Boeing has secured more than $12 billion in financing as it shores up its balance sheet. Wrapping things up, some of the names putting after the bell tonight include Whirlpool, F5 Networks, and Juniper. From the First Breaking News Desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie?
Okay, I thank you very much, Bill. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type SQUAWK, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellett, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks a lot. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Well, let's take this virus story from a different angle. And I've been looking forward to this conversation because I feel like this is a part of the story that maybe we're not talking as much about. And we've got the perfect guy to talk about it. And that's the China piece, the political piece, the legacy, sort of the ongoing legacy of President Xi Jinping. Andy Brown here with us, editorial director for Bloomberg New Economy. He's in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. Lived in China, runs this massive conference that we've done the last couple of years there, understands this so well. So how do we read this? I mean, this would appear to be a massive test for President Xi Jinping.
This is a massive test for China, domestically and internationally. A test not just of the quality of the leadership and the values that they uphold, but the systems and the institutions that they've set up, the integrity, the scale, the robustness of those institutions, and of course, specifically in this case, the healthcare institutions.
Well, and let's take us, I have spent so much time over the weekend talking about that one photo of, 20 excavators, right? Frantically, seemingly digging, and they're supposed to build a hospital in about a week.
Right. So this is China at its best. Okay?
Right.
This
I feel a little managed, Andy. No, in terms of the photo. But go ahead, please.
It's awesome. I mean, the capacity of the Chinese state to respond at times like these is really incredibly impressive. So, a hospital in 6 days. During SARS back in 2002, 2003, they built a hospital in Beijing in 7 days.
So they can do it.
They can do it,
yeah.
And so in Wuhan, I think there was a bit of one-upmanship. Okay, we're going to do it in 6. Of course, it's prefabricated, but nevertheless, this is a sophisticated building with labs and, wards and
it's like a video game. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's so that piece has gone very well. Perhaps what has gone less well is the social and the political aspects of this. And in particular, people are focusing on the quarantine itself.
Right.
How useful has this been, right? I mean, they're locking down 60 million people. Nobody has ever before in human history attempted this. We don't know what the outcome is. We don't know if this is going to help or make things worse.
Well, and I also wonder, I feel like we've been speculating a little bit along with other folks about the contours of the timing of this as it relates to the Lunar New Year holiday. And I was alluding to this earlier as I sort of talked and heard about some of our expat friends, and you were one of them back in the day. People tend to go away for a holiday. Some friends that I know of have, they're in Australia at this point. They're like staying put, not coming back. Like, help us understand sort of the contours of the travel and things like that, because that complicates this, right?
It complicates it immeasurably domestically. You have something like this time of year, 3 billion trips planned around China. People are going off visiting their families, and then internationally. So, this is the big difference between now and SARS. Back in 2000, Chinese travel out of China, about 10 million trips a year out of China. Now it's 150 million trips, moving towards 200 million trips a year. So the risk to the global economy and to global health from pandemics or epidemics in China is exponentially greater.
But what I love that you ask, you say this, sealing off cities, is it a necessary move that demonstrates the advantages of a command and control government, or is it a wild overaction by Xi, President Xi, made possible by the absence of checks and balances, public debate, and media scrutiny? I mean, this is the test. If what was done, it's going to be like genius, right? And if
we'll never know, because it's impossible to prove it counterfactual. There is some evidence that if you lock down, if you prevent travel at the outset of an epidemic, you may be able to slow its spread. There's an awful lot of evidence that you may actually exacerbate shortages. What happens is you create panic. People, under any circumstances, you're putting healthcare systems in an epidemic like this under enormous strain, which creates shortages of medicine and testing kits and goggles and masks and hospital beds and medical personnel. When you declare a quarantine, you tend to exacerbate those shortages, and you put an enormous strain on cities. I mean, people in Wuhan are finding it difficult to get out and about and buy food, go to hospitals. It's difficult for medical equipment and supplies to reach the hospitals. And what happens in China, the medical system is a hospital-based system. They have no primary care in China. So under any circumstances,
so everybody goes to the hospital.
Yeah, if you get the flu, you go to the hospital. If you have a sniffle, you go to the hospital. They put you on a drip. So now what you've got is this stampede of people to hospitals, people who may genuinely be sick with this virus, and people who think they may be. They're worried and they're all sort of crowded in hospital corridors now, and the hospitals themselves are becoming vectors for infection.
Oof. Well, it's really good context. We always appreciate it. Andy Brown, next time I want to talk to you, because we've run out of time, about the response of big businesses, big global businesses, and how that may play out. So much more to come on this story, we know, from Andy Brown, editorial director for Bloomberg New Economy. He was here with us in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. And
coming up, we've got the chart of the day. We'll check in with Dave Wilson, and then we'll also, of course, count you down to the closing bell on this Monday, because equity is certainly off their lows of the session, but bouncing around here a little bit. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master along with Jason Kelly, and you are listening to Bloomberg Business Week on Bloomberg Radio and watching us on YouTube.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The coronavirus has triggered a pullback of about 1.5 to 1.75%. The Dow falling 413 points, the Nasdaq 163, the S&P 47. Investors have been looking to get out of companies with close ties to China. That includes airlines and other travel companies. Starbucks shares are down 3% alone because of the number of stores it has in China. Money managers, though, are less worried. They say the market had been due for a pullback. The Vitamin Shop has a deal with LA Fitness. It's been opening locations in the health clubs to sell sports nutrition products and healthy snacks along with vitamins. The fitness industry is growing, but the pressure is coming from low-cost and boutique operators. That's squeezing the mid-tier operators. They don't have the eucalyptus-scented towels of high-end gyms like Equinox or the low-priced incentives of Planet Fitness. Some clubs, such as Town Sports or Racing with the Calendar, they have loans coming due. I'm Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. What if you could keep the top?
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run. Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up, lift. Mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Hand off Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
TuneIn is your ticket to on-the-glass NHL action. With the NHL on TuneIn, listen to every one-timer, hear every stick save, and experience every goal for every team across the league.
Featuring home and away feeds for all 31 teams.
TuneIn brings the excitement of the NHL home to you all season long. Plus, with NHL On Demand, skate back in time and relive the best moments of the season while listening to past games in their entirety. Listen to the NHL on TuneIn.
Search NHL today.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
On the goal line, scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Gonna move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, taking the long view on prison.
In 100 years, we're not going to be locking human beings in cages, because we'll understand then, as we understand about slavery now, that it was immoral, that it just didn't work.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Get the drive to the close on this day where, as we've heard Charlie Pellet say, stocks have been bouncing around a little bit off their lows, but still some uncertainty out there. And speaking of which, Charlie Pellet's here. He's going to give us an update. Hey, Charlie.
Thank you very much, Jason Kelly. And again, worth repeating that the State Department is urging American residents to reconsider travel to China due to the coronavirus first identified in Wuhan, China. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all slumping. 28 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Today, at the worst level, we did have the Dow Jones Industrial Average down 550 points. Right now on the Bloomberg, looking at a loss of 416, down by 1.4%. S&P down 47, also a drop of 1.4%. NASDAQ is down 164. That is a drop of just about 1.8%. So stocks are slumping, bonds are rallying as concern over the impact of a deadly virus that originated in China rattled global markets. Lori Calvasina is head of U.S. equity strategy at RBC Capital Markets.
We've actually been telling investors for a while we thought the markets were overdue for a pullback. Something, not terrible like 4Q 2018, but something of the 5 to 10% variety. I mean, quite frankly, valuations are just extremely stretched right now, and positioning is extremely euphoric. We've said that if the right catalyst came along, markets would be right for a pullback. We'll see if that turns out to be this with the virus. But to be honest, we're due for a breather.
The 10-year up 24.30 seconds, yield 1.59%. Now, we've got crude, West Texas Intermediate down 2.3%, 52.97 a barrel. Brent crude down 2.5%, 59.15. Starbucks, McDonald's, Domino's Pizza among the restaurant stocks trading lower. At Guggenheim, an analyst there says all three American restaurant chains, of those three, Starbucks is the most exposed to the virus, as measured by percentage of worldwide revenue and operating income. Starbucks down 3.2%, McDonald's down 0.7%, Domino's down by 0.4%. Recapping U.S. stocks lower across the board, 27 minutes to go ahead of the close, with the S&P down 49, lower now by 1.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here.
Belinda Carlisle and the Go-Go's.
There's a documentary that was just done of the Go-Go's that actually got its debut at Sundance this past weekend.
Did it really?
Absolutely. Hey. And the Go-Go's are going on tour this year.
Are they?
They are.
Wow, it's been a while, right? They haven't gotten together, I feel like, in a long time.
No, they haven't. So you'll be lining up for tickets, Carol.
They were like great beach music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
It was adorable.
But, getting weak in this context refers to what's going on with the Russell 2000 index. Think back a couple of years, right? I mean, when tariffs were first imposed,
Those were the days.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thought was the larger companies would get hit the most, so the smaller ones would hold up relatively well.
Actually, we talked about that, I feel like, in the last couple of years. We talked about domestic, smaller companies, that was the play as we worried about trade.
Absolutely. Well, it has not worked out that way to the point where, as of Friday, after a couple of failed attempts at a rebound, you saw the ratio between the Russell 2000 and the S&P 500 at its lowest level since January 2008. Of course, you know what was happening in January 2008, right? Bear market was starting. No, absolutely nothing good. So, I mean, it just kind of jumps out. The ratio closed Friday 18% below a peak in June 2018. So really, that idea that you buy the smaller companies and you avoid the worst did not pan out at all, except if you look at today. I mean, that's where things get interesting. I mean, given that we had this low on Friday, you look and you see the Russell down 0.8%. The S&P 500 is lower by 1.5%. So, how the wheel has turned on a day like this where there's so much concern and, risk off is the phrase of the moment. Yet the smaller companies, which tend to be riskier, it's just not panning out that way. So if you want to see this chart, folks, send me an email. I'll get it to you along with the explanation that goes with it and everything I do going forward. The email address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
But every time we see it kind of get to this level, Dave, do we automatically run into trouble or not necessarily?
Well, I mean, you look back and you see 2007, 08, 09, that it kind of bounced around.
Yeah.
Even though, the lows were pretty much in line with where we are now. You really have to go back further than that, to see any other, signs of greater weakness, mid-2004, basically. So, and of course, that was a bull market period. Yeah. So it's not like this is exclusive to
it's not like declines. Bing, 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 we've got an indicator. Everybody.
Absolutely. It's just a way to kind of keep score. I mean, given, the concern that you think about what's going on in the S&P 500, that the biggest companies are really carrying the day. Well, the bigger companies as a group, whether you just focus in on the, the FANG stocks of the world or whatever,
right.
They're carrying the day in a broad sense.
All right, so we got 23 minutes or so left in the trade. Stocks seem to be taking something of a leg down, not quite at the lows of the session, but what are you hearing sort of on the desk and as you talk to people about the sentiment as we get toward the close here?
Well, it's not great, but at the same time, you get the sense that people have been anticipating that something had to happen.
Yeah.
You got to go back to early October to see the last time the S&P 500 fell more than 1% in a day. I mean, we were talking about this on Friday because we expected that to happen, and in fact, the index only dropped 0.9%, so it didn't quite get there. Today, it looks like it's pretty much a lock at the moment. And then beyond that, the idea of back-to-back declines. We're talking about the last 30 days of trading. We haven't had them, which takes you back to early December. And that, I saw a tweet earlier from LPL Financial's Ryan Dietrich that said, that's tying the longest streak since 1955.
Wow. That's a long time. I'm looking at RSI, relative strength, just one of those technical indicators. I mean, we're definitely well below that overbought signal, that red line that typically says and we know the index has been overbought, but we'll see whether or not it continues lower or whether because of that now it becomes oversold and bounces back.
Or at the very least, whether the tendency for stocks to move higher reasserts itself. Because, how many times in the last few weeks have we talked about sort of a slow grind higher? Well, this is the quick flash down. So the question then becomes, does the trend reassert itself or does what we're seeing in the last couple of days turn into something more?
Perfect setup for our next guest.
It absolutely is. We're going to catch up with Craig Johnson. He is Chief Market Technician over at Piper Sandler. In the meantime, our thanks to Dave Wilson. He'll be back in just a bit with his stock of the day. In the meantime, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got world and national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, President Trump's lawyers taking their turn before the U.S. Senate at the impeachment hearings. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports live from Capitol Hill. Irv.
Bob, they're taking up the role of Rudy Giuliani in pressing Ukraine on the president's behalf. Lawyer Jane Raskin said the attack on Giuliani was a distraction because of the weakness of the case against the president.
Giuliani admits he's acting as the president's personal attorney, and therefore he had to have been acting with a political motive to influence the 2020 election. No other option, right? Wrong. The score is Mayor Giuliani 4, Mr. Schiff 0.
Raskin explained that Giuliani was looking into Ukraine months before Joe Biden announced his candidacy to find evidence that would contradict the Mueller investigation finding that Russia helped Donald Trump win the presidency. Bob?
Irv Chapman live on Capitol Hill. Thank you. Pressure's building on senators to call John Bolton as an impeachment witness after a leaked draft from his forthcoming book claimed the president delayed military aid for Ukraine until Trump said it agreed to help investigate political foe Joe Biden. Trump says he never told Bolton such a thing. What you might have heard had his aides not been shouting to stop questions from reporters is the president saying the Bolton allegation is false. Just to be clear, it was White House aides who were shouting down reporters. China has confirmed a surge in the number of people infected with the coronavirus as measures intended to slow its spread fail to work. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run, mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
TuneIn is your ticket to on-the-glass NHL action. With the NHL on TuneIn, listen to every one-timer, hear every stick save, and experience every goal for every team across the league.
Featuring home and away feeds for all 31 teams.
TuneIn brings the excitement of the NHL home to you all season long. Plus, with NHL On Demand, skate back in time and relive the best moments of the season while listening to past games in their entirety. Listen to the NHL on TuneIn.
Search NHL today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all in retreat right now. 50-point drop on the S&P 500 index, down 1.5%. The Dow lower by 436 points, also down 1.5%. At the worst level this morning, have been down 550. Also, very briefly, we did see the Dow Jones Industrial Average turning negative in the year-to-date column on the Bloomberg. NASDAQ down 169 points, a drop now of 1.8%. 10-year up 24.30 seconds, yield 1.59%. Gold now up 0.7%, 15.81 the ounce. Crude oil retreating again today. West Texas Intermediate down 2.3%, 52.93 a barrel. Brent 59.08, back below 60. Brent dropping 2.7%. So again, recapping, S&P down the most in almost 4 months, lower by 51 points, down 1.5%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home? Honey, please, I'll do the driving. Drive on. Excuse me, I want to drive. Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the drive to the close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
All right, time for the drive to the close on this Monday. We are definitely well off our lows of the session. Craig Johnson is back with us, Chief Market Technician at Piper Sandler, joining us in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio right here in New York. Good afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
How are you looking at this market, technically?
Technically, I look at this market as this is a market that was kind of like dry tinder, to be honest with you. We wrote up a piece in January talking about melt-ups. Man, we kind of made it a play on words. I'll stop the world and melt with you.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we were thinking this market was doing. And we thought it was only a matter of time before there was some sort of an event that was going to lead to a sell-off or a correction in the market. Now, I don't think this is the end of the bull market by any stretch, but I think it is a healthy correction. And if you just look at some of the levels on the chart of the S&P 500, you can see that your 50-day comes into play at levels where you're closer to about...
Kind of love a guest who walks in and says, can I pull up my Bloomberg because I'm going to look at some charts.
Exactly.
Anyway, go ahead.
At 31.98, and then you've got the 200-day moving average that comes in around 3,000.
Yeah.
So a good, healthy 5 to 10% correction, I think, would be very healthy for this market.
Like we've seen over the past year a couple of times, whether it was the summer sell-off or whether it was the end of the year sell-off a year ago. We've seen this before.
Correct. We've gone from FOMO in 2018, January of 18. We raised our hand. They said, hey, look, there's a lot of charts that are going parabolic right now.
Right.
And back then it was Caterpillar, and it was 3M, and it was Boeing.
Right.
And if you pull up any of those charts today, you can see you've had very meaningful corrections in all of those stocks. And then you went from FOMO, and then you went to JOMO. And JOMO was the joy of missing out in the entire fourth quarter of 2018.
Right.
And then you've gone back into full-on
and
FOMO.
summer, August of 2019.
Correct. And then you went into full-on FOMO again. And now I think you're entering a period, well, I don't know if it's JOMO quite yet, but I think it's time to take some money off the table. You look at charts like Apple.
But I love when you guys say that. It's time to take some money off the table. So me, in a 10% correction or whatever, I'd be like, let me take it all off the table because I would rather, preserve my investments rather than lose it. What do you mean when you say take some money off the table?
Well, take a chart like Apple. Here's another example of a stock that's gone pretty much parabolic. You're very stretched above your 200-day moving average. If I own that, I would take some profits in that name. Now, where would I put it? Because you want to take
up
it
86% last year.
86%. We bought it for the Piper Sandler model right there at the lows in December, and we own it, and we're looking at these names, and we think it's time to trim this. Now, where do you do with the money? Because you don't want to be out of the market. So look at a stock like GE. Mm-hmm. It's already very well beat up. Even if the market corrects further, you've got a pretty good basis starting to form on that chart on a weekly basis.
So why don't you want to be out of the market? When you say out of the market, meaning you don't want to be out of the equity market?
Yeah, you don't want to necessarily be out of the equity market because there's opportunities to be had. If you
Private market, I can make a lot more money right now.
Sure, but there's also in this market, we can clip some dividends. We can wait for some of these returns. Market timing is tough. Yes, that's what we're supposed to do as professionals is get that market timing right. But for the average individual, to say to them, hey, take money off the table, walk away, go to cash, they're probably not going to put it back in at an opportune time. So if you rotate and take some money, trim some of the positions at Apple and some of the other extended names like Adobe and ServiceNow and some of these names, and maybe buy a Philip Morris that's already kind of corrected and starting to turn back up, or even buy the energy names, which has been way out of favor with a lot of people, but I see less downside in some of those names if you do get a bigger correction in this tape, and you can clip some 3 and 4% dividends in some very nice looking energy stocks.
So if you don't get the upside, you get the dividend.
Correct.
Talk to us about Visa. That's a name that I think you mentioned as well as potentially being attractive. Why?
Well, the primary trend on Visa still is, up and to the right. But when you look at the chart of Visa, you've really been sort of consolidating for the better part of 6 months. You broke out. Now you're coming back to retest support. I would think that you will find support on Visa probably around 188 at the 50-day, worst case 176. And all you're doing is coming back to retest support. Mm-hmm. And then I would expect to see another leg higher. Again, nothing is wrong with Apple. It's a great company. We just have to differentiate with what we do between what's a great company and what's a great stock.
Right.
And would you put fresh money into Apple today? I ask anybody here, right?
Well, you would if you believe its growth proposition, right? And I mean, it's interesting because I think about a year ago, remember we were talking to Gene Munster, and he said Apple's going to be the best performing FANG stock. He was right. And there are a lot of folks that, people constantly that there are naysayers, and yet it consistently returns. So I know you're saying don't sell everything, but I mean, I do wonder about those FANG names that seem to consistently return.
Sure. And again, there's nothing wrong fundamentally from the Apple perspective. It's just a question of with this stock, 30 and change now % above its 200-day moving average, is this where you want to put new money? For me, the answer is no. I think I'd rather
Even
buy...
with a new phone coming later at the end of the year?
Well, don't tell my wife, but I'm probably
I'm waiting. That's what I'm waiting for, is the 5G upgrade.
I buy every new phone that comes out, and I turn around and I recycle them to the rest of the family. But my wife doesn't like to always hear this.
This is a good catalyst.
Right. Yeah. But at the end of the day, if you got to make a choice between putting this into what now and thinking about it from a risk-reward perspective, I'd wait for a little bit of a correction or a pullback and take some of the profits out of these names. It's a huge part of the benchmark, and a lot of portfolio managers can't even own a full position of Apple because it's 5-6% of the S&P 500.
Right.
So they buy all the derivative names to build up their position, and it kind of creates this kind of lift effect. But if Apple stumbles or has any challenges with their earnings, not that I'm foreshadowing that this week, it's going to lead to a bigger, deeper sell-off for the entire market, because this is going to be such a huge weight for all these tech stocks.
You mentioned ServiceNow in passing. It's a name that we're interested in part because we spent some time with the outgoing CEO, obviously headed to take the big job at Nike. But you've got Bill McDermott coming in, seasoned executive there. What do the charts tell you about now?
So when I look at ServiceNow, it's a great-looking chart. It's made a very nice-looking base. It's broken out above the old highs you had back in July, and it's just now correcting right back to where this stock had broke out at. So from my perspective, this pullback toward 295, 300, it's going to be an opportunity to be buying that stock. And it's not nearly as extended above its 200-day as what I have with Apple and some of the other names.
I love GE. You're interested. Just 20 seconds here. What's your pitch here? What's your elevator pitch for GE? Besides that, it's just gotten beaten up so much.
The elevator pitch for GE is when I go back and I look at these longer-term charts on GE, weekly charts and monthly charts, it's making a long-term bottom. And truly, nobody cares. I like some of these stocks when they make big bottoms and nobody cares.
53% last year.
Still nobody cares.
Still nobody cares.
Nobody cares.
So you'd buy it?
I would, and nobody's asked me about GE in probably 6 months.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you should come here because we talk about it a lot.
Yeah, we do. We do. We'll ask you about it all day long. Craig Johnson, Chief Market Technician for Piper Sandler, here with us in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Coming up, we're going to get you to that close. It's a red day. We'll bring you the details here on Bloomberg Radio.
Coffee or full breakfast? Have it at Daybreak.
Bloomberg has more from Hong Kong.
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern. Bloomberg Daybreak.
We get a policy decision from the Federal Reserve.
On Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Palm Beach, Florida real estate is on a winning streak. Large houses, small houses, empty lots, and mansions have all flown off the shelf thanks to Florida's income tax rate of 0%. In the past 12 months, 3 properties in the town sold for $100 million each. Several brokers say it's the longest bull run of their careers, with one notable exception. There's a cluster of 10 mansions sitting unsold.
Boredom, fitness enemy number 1. So don't just run. Mix it up, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today. Don't miss Super Bowl 54 because you can't watch the game on TV.
Nice hit over the left guard. Touchdown.
Listen to every second of the action with your phone, tablet, computer, or connected device. All you need is a TuneIn Premium subscription.
Search Premium to upgrade today.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Down Monday with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all down by 1.5% or more. Folks from Squarespace and the New York Knicks ringing that closing bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Stocks slump, bonds rallied as concern over the impact of a deadly virus that originated in China rattled global markets. Craig Johnson is chief market technician at Piper Sandler, and moments ago, right here on Bloomberg Business Week, he put the selling like this.
We've gone from FOMO in 2018, January of 18. We raised our hand and said, hey, look, there's a lot of charts that are going parabolic right now. And back then it was Caterpillar, and it was 3M, and it was Boeing. Right. And if you pull up any of those charts today, you can see you've had very meaningful corrections in all those stocks. And then you went from FOMO, and then you went to JOMO. And JOMO was the joy of missing out in the entire fourth quarter of 2018. And then you went into full-on FOMO again.
At the worst level of the day, the Dow had been down 549 points, down 1.9%. S&P 500 index had been down 61 points, also down 1.9%. But again, worth repeating, here's where we ended the Monday session. S&P down 52, a drop of 1.6%. The Dow down 456, down 1.6%. And NASDAQ down 175 points, down 1.9%. Some of the other stories that we're following today, we did see a sell-off in a lot of travel-related and technology names as a result of concerns about the virus in China. Intel, for example, dropping today among chip makers. Intel was down 4.1%. Carnival Cruise Lines declining today. Shares of CCL dropping today by just about 7%, down by 4%. Wynn shares tumbling almost 8%. And some of the other stocks today, American Airlines down today by 5.5%. So again, recapping here, stocks lower, the 10-year up 24.30 seconds, the yield 1.60%, and gold up 0.7% to $15.82 the ounce. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Move around. Motion creates the motion.
I feel the earth move under my feet.
You move like they do. I've never seen anyone move that fast.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Something's called movers and shakers. They cost a little more, but that name cracked me up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Oh, what an interesting year 2020 is already turning out to be, and we're only just about wrapping up the first month. All right, so we did have a red sticky, as we like to call it around Bloomberg, red hotline, and red hot, I should say, or NI hot. S&P 500 posting its biggest one-day decline since October 2nd. I think Charlie mentioned as well, so we just wanted to put that out there. We did see a fair amount of selling, but definitely finishing off our lows of the day. Some would say that's a sign of some strength in the overall market. As for the overall market, the broad-based S&P 500, 55 names in the index actually winning, turning up with some gains in today's session. 446 lower, 4 unchanged. Jason Kelly, where do you want to start?
I want to start with Wynn Resorts, and obviously the exposure to the Chinese market, dragging that name down. It was your number one, your worst performer in the S&P, down 8%, down about $10, almost $11 in the trading. And if you go down the list there, Las Vegas Sands, excuse me.
You okay?
Also on this list, yes, indeed. Just need a little bit of water, which I will have in a second. But, those casino names. And, we're going to talk a little bit later on the show. We're going to play out a conversation that we had with another guy in the hospitality business. I tell you who it is. It's Jim Allen from Hard Rock International. Really interesting conversation that we taped earlier today here at Bloomberg headquarters. They've got a big week leading into the Super Bowl that's being played at the stadium that they have their name on. $250 million they paid for that, right? And they also have a big Super Bowl ad. We're going to talk about that. But also, he is worried to some extent, and they are making little changes, at least for the moment, but certainly watching this space.
You're going to want to stick around for that conversation because they have been adding hotels and so on and so forth. But I do think what he had to say, particularly about the outlook, I think was really pertinent to the environment that we're in right now, especially as we start to get more earnings reports and we hear from CEOs about the outlook. I do want to mention one more name, and it's virus connected, RCL, which is Royal Caribbean. That stock was your third biggest decliner in the S&P 500, down 7.6%. Royal Caribbean putting out a statement saying it is suspending 2 sailings because of the coronavirus. This is on their Spectrum of the Seas. I guess that's the name of the ship there. January 27th and January 31st. Those are the suspensions that they are doing. And that specific ship, currently it's only ship home ported in China. They're going to provide refunds, but man, that's okay then for the consumers, right? But it just means that's not being spent, and that means it's just a slowdown in the, we talked about the hospitality industry, the leisure industry. It is certainly being shut down pretty quickly and impacted.
I want to talk a little bit about Boeing. There was a headline earlier. We hit it when it crossed the Bloomberg, courtesy of CNBC, saying that Boeing's securing financing commitments for more than $12 billion. That obviously is an important lifeline to some extent for that company, which is still struggling to get that 737 MAX back up into the air. No real timetable set on that. The stock's still down, and you do wonder all of these things weighing on Boeing, but it ended up down about 2%. It had been down as much as about 2.6%. So that headline sort of sent it back a little bit, so off its lows of the day.
In terms of the winners, that include those numbers, as Dave Wilson reported earlier, those that were out with some earnings results that investors like. Arconic, your number one gainer in the S&P 500, up almost 5.3% here. Talking about fourth quarter adjusted EPS, it was a little bit light. Fourth quarter revenue was pretty much in line, but I think it was the outlooks. 2020 adjusted revenue, 13.9 to 14.2. That's pretty much a little bit raising that forecast there. And 2020 adjusted EPS, 222 to 242. That definitely beats the estimate out there of 237. So it's definitely earnings related. Let's do the volatility index report. I'm guessing it shot up.
Yeah, it shot up big time. It was up 12% on Friday. It was up 25% today. This is the highest we've seen in quite some time. The VIX closing at 18.24. This is Bloomberg.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for a price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave.
Who?
Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson!
Hey, Mr. Wilson, before we get to your stock today, just want to point out that was the biggest gain in the VIX since August of 2019, and its highest since October of 2019. Dave, what's your stock?
Forestar Group, Jason. That's Forestar. It's a company that's in the residential lot development business. Company buys land and designs communities and then works with home builders to complete projects. Forestar was founded in 1955. The company spun off in 2007 from a paper producer, Temple Inland. A decade later, it became a unit of home builder D.R. Horton, which bought a 75% stake for $588 million. The rest remained publicly traded under the ticker FOR. Now, Horton paid $17.75 a share for its holding, and Forestar has been on either side of that price since the deal was done. The stake dropped to 65% in September when Forestar raised $106 million in a sale of new shares. Now, Horton released quarterly results today, and the company reaffirmed a plan to reduce its stake in Forestar to less than 50%. Chief Operating Officer Michael Murray said on a conference call that Horton may do some selling to reach that goal rather than leaving it up to Forestar to do more share sales. Now, that prospect didn't seem to go over so well. I mean, Forestar dropped 8.8%, and that was its biggest loss in 4 months.
Yeah, that's a big hit. I mean, and we know the market was down, but that shows how much above and beyond, right?
And home builders have been a real exception.
Yeah.
D.R. Horton up after its earnings today, and we've seen gains in Pulte Group and beyond.
All right. Good name. Thank you very much, Dave Wilson, with your stock today. We'll be back with you tomorrow for some market insights, chart, and stock. Coming up, we're going to check in with one of our favorite private equity voices. He's going to hang around with us, talk about that side of the market. First, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got your world national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, it wasn't just unfair, they say. President Trump's lawyers are asserting the House investigation that led to impeachment violated all the rules in the book. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman is live with the latest from Capitol Hill. Irv.
Bob, Deputy White House Counsel Patrick Philbin said the president's right to send a lawyer to the House hearings was severely limited by the committees.
Why did House Democrats jettison every precedent and every principle of due process in the way they devised these hearing procedures? The process was never about finding the truth. The process was about achieving a predetermined outcome on a timetable and having it done by Christmas.
Philbin said the president followed the advice of Justice Department lawyers when he told his top advisors to ignore subpoenas to testify. Bob?
Irv Chapman live on Capitol Hill, thank you. After having a 90-minute dinner conversation with an associate of his lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, and discussing U.S. policy in Ukraine, then claiming he hadn't met or didn't know the man, President Trump today told reporters he doesn't know what his former national security advisor is talking about. The New York Times reports a leak from John Bolton's forthcoming book runs counter to the impeachment trial arguments of Trump's attorneys. Bolton writes that Trump did tie military aid for Ukraine to a promise it would help investigate political foe Joe Biden. Trump calls that false.
Well, I haven't seen a manuscript, but I can tell you nothing was ever said to John Bolton, but I have not seen a manuscript. I guess he's writing a book. I have not seen it.
Some Republican senators are saying this increases the pressure for Bolton to be called as an impeachment witness. Global News, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. I'm Bob Moon.
You can't be the only one who spends time examining angles,
This sort of mini deal, what would it look like?
considering possibilities,
From a credit perspective, this is good news.
planning for eventualities.
This company really has to get back on a growth track.
You're right. The others are here.
General Electric is such an interesting story.
Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney. Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Adopt US Kids presents What to Expect When You're Expecting a Teenager. Learning the lingo.
Jelly. Jelly adjective. Jelly is a shorter, better way to say jealous. As in, Chloe, I am like so jelly of your unicorn phone case.
You don't have to speak teen to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same. Visit adoptuskids.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt US Kids, and the Ad Council.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
This week on the New Yorker Radio Hour, taking the long view on prison.
In 100 years, we're not going to be locking human beings in cages. Because we'll understand then, as we understand about slavery now, that it was immoral, that it just didn't work.
Listen to this episode of the New Yorker Radio Hour on TuneIn today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
I think I just be myself, let it come naturally. I never try to, go outside the box.
Super Bowl 54, the biggest game of the year, is live on TuneIn Premium. Be there when the Kansas City Chiefs, dreaming of their first championship in 50 years, collide with the San Francisco 49ers' quest to bring a sixth Lombardi trophy to the Bay Area. Wherever you are when the ball kicks off Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, listen to every electric moment of Super Bowl 54 with the NFL on TuneIn Premium. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Couple of after-the-bell earnings reports to pass along. First of all, Juniper Networks reporting adjusted earnings per share for the fourth quarter that beat the average analyst estimate. Juniper shares, they are down now by 1.5%. Also out with earnings after the bell, Whirlpool, its shares up now by 1.6%. A down Monday here, familiar theme. With the S&P 500 index dropping 51 points, down 1.6%. Stocks slumped, bonds rallied as concern over the impact of a deadly virus that originated in China rattled global markets. S&P 500 index down the most in 4 months. Dow Jones Industrial Average erasing its 2020 gain, looking at red in the YTD column on the Bloomberg. The Dow dropped 453 points today, down 1.6%. Again, the S&P also down 1.6%. NASDAQ down 175, down 1.9%. 10-year up 20 24-30 seconds yield 1.59%. Gold up 0.7%, 15.83 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude down 2.6%, 52.77 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week on this Monday. Carol Massler along with Jason Kelly, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the world of private equity. It's always fun to catch up with this next guest this time of year because it's around the time that he puts out his big, bold predictions, his outrageous predictions for private equity for the coming year. We're talking about Antoine Drian, chairman of Triago. He's here with us in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. He says he's based in Paris, but he's really a global citizen all over the world.
You living on a plane or something?
Everywhere. Berlin, Dubai, all of these different places because this is a global industry, to say the least. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Happy New Year,
Great
belatedly.
to see you, too. Thank you.
So, talk to us about some of these predictions. My favorite, actually, is the first one, and I'll tell you why. Because it's Blackstone raises $25 billion in a month. And, Carol and I have a joke because we spent a lot of time with Steve Schwartzman, and one of the things he likes to do is say, go big. And why wouldn't they raise $25 billion? It's not the craziest idea.
It may be crazy for next year, for this year, but I guess that in the next years this is going to happen, and this actually may not need a month, it may need a minute.
Right.
The reason why is that private equity is obviously interesting to many now, including the retail market. And as you know, the SEC will be putting out some new rules that basically allow the public, maybe not all of the public, but a lot of it, to actually invest in private equity funds, and that's a reason to go. I guess that's another reason to go big.
Right. One of the other things you point out, and this is one very close to something we talk about a lot, is SoftBank and the Vision Fund, and how, and we're sort of getting more into the world of venture capital here momentarily, or for a moment, but you have a bold, outrageous prediction that they'll raise $150 billion. They've raised huge amounts of money so far. The first Vision Fund was $100 billion.
Indeed. It was actually the largest, and it's still, I guess, the largest fund up there. And $150 billion would obviously be the new largest fund out there. It's actually 4 times the number 2 fund. Right. I think it's 26. So yes, they already have a lot of money, and they should have more, I guess.
I love, though, as a caveat to this, is, a lot of that money comes, specifically from state-connected entities in China, correct?
Yes.
There's a nice little circle there.
Yes, indeed. And then that's because of what's going on in this world. China is obviously taking a big piece of the action, and I guess they want to put money into private equity everywhere. They've been buying Africa basically through private equity and other areas. So why not?
The state-owned entities.
Yes.
You also talk a little bit about CPPIB, the Canada Pension Plan Investment Board. One of the most admired, I think, investors out there. They really pioneered in many ways, along with some of the other Canadian pensions, this direct investment model. And I think you and I have talked about that over the years. What's the sort of outrageous prediction there, and what's underneath it?
The prediction is that they will put out a 50-year fund. Many people in this space feel that investing for 5 years or 10 years is not enough, and that if you find a good investment, you should keep it. And some other people, pensioners, feel that if they can put their money at 10% a year forever, that's obviously good. Hence this prediction. Not so outrageous, actually.
So, okay, I find this a little outrageous. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway is launching a private equity division. I had to remind myself. I knew he had made some comments that were critical of PE. I just had to remember. But in the past, he has said specifically, we have seen a number of proposals from private equity funds where the returns are really not calculated in a manner that I would regard as honest. If I were running a pension fund, I would be very careful about what was being offered to me. So is he saying, I'm going to do a private equity? If he does this, he's going to say, I can do a private equity fund that is more transparent and better than the ones that are existing. This is kind of interesting, this thought.
I think what he's doing is already private equity, right?
Yeah.
He is already buying control positions in companies that need, something, and this is what PE people are doing. So here the prediction is that he would change, the format of this fund, but that's it. I mean, I guess the business itself would basically be the same.
So wait. So would this be a fund that others can then tap into? I guess so.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Well,
and open to others. Yeah.
Sure. And look, I mean, he's partnered with 3G. I mean, he's gotten into the private equity business, at least from an arm's length perspective. One more outrageous, and then we're going to take a break and come back. Chuck Schwab buys KKR. I love this one. Chuck being Henry Kravitz's boss, I don't quite see it, but go on.
Well, I'm not sure this is the main idea here. The main idea is that mainstream asset managers want to become big also in private equity, and that the best way to get there quickly is to buy something that's there and buy something that's big.
Right.
So that's the reason.
I do wonder if we're going to see some consolidation across these various asset classes. You think about what BlackRock has done and expanding. These names are starting to get closer and closer to each other's territory. All right, Antoine Durand, stick around. We're going to continue the conversation. I want to talk a little bit about valuations out in the private world.
The political environment, perhaps.
Maybe a little politics.
And whether or not we have enough transparency in that private equity world. I just want to point out, I love this. Charles Schwab, they've got a market value about $59 billion. KKR about $25 billion. So together, be a little bit of a behemoth out there in this space. All right, coming up, we're going to talk more PE. Stick around. You are listening to Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The coronavirus is getting the blame for the 1.5% to almost 2% beating the stock averages took. The Dow fell 454 points. The Nasdaq 176. Both haven't seen a day this bad since August. The S&P dropped 52 for its biggest one-day drop since October 2nd. Investors worried about how the virus would affect the companies with exposure to China pulled back. Starbucks has had to close stores there. Its shares fell 3%. American Airlines shares fell 3% as well, especially now that the State Department is urging U.S. residents to rethink travel to China. Energy shares also hard hit. Oil at its lowest since October as well. It settled at $53.19 a barrel. Boeing can make some better plans now and apparently got the loans it was hoping to secure. Reports say more than $12 billion worth from about a dozen banks to get it through the 737 MAX crisis. I'm Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. What if...
Take the helm and ignite your spirit of adventure with a Sunsail holiday. Relax on a skippered yacht from sunny St. Lucia to the nutmeg-scented shores of Grenada. Or take charge with a bareboat charter along Dubrovnik's glittering coastline. With up to 20% off selected destinations, now is the time to book your Sunsail adventure. Sunsail. See the world differently.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Boredom. fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run, mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see three men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, a sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
I spy with my little eye something beginning with P.
People.
No, parrot.
I'll have to remember my binoculars next time.
Although you might not be able to see it, your small actions can have a real impact with Shell. Every time you fill up and use Shell Go Plus, you'll be protecting and replanting forests around the world. Make the change. Drive carbon neutral. Shell. Go well. See goplus.shell.com/CO2 for details.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
The Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Coming up, we're going to continue our conversation, with Antoine. We're going to talk about the world of private equity, maybe a little politics, some valuations.
A few folks on the campaign trail that are kind of pushing back when it comes to PE.
Pushing, to say the least. All right, let's get back to Charlie Pellet first. He's got an update on what's going on after the close. Hey, Charlie.
All right, well, a couple of earnings reports out from both Rambus and Juniper. Let's begin with Juniper. Its shares now are down by 1.4%. Juniper Networks reporting after the bell. Also looking at shares of Rambus right now, all over the map, but last quote going by on Rambus. Now looking at that stock, it is down by just about 5.6%. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all in retreat right now, with the S&P 500 index falling 52 points, down 1.6% today. The Dow also down 1.6%, down 453 points. NASDAQ lower by 175, a drop there of 1.9%. Stocks slumped, bonds rallied as concern over the impact of a deadly virus that originated in China rattled global markets. The 10-year up 25 seconds with a yield of 1.59%. Catherine Rooney-Vera is head of research and strategy at Baltic.
Everyone likes to look back at SARS, MERS, Ebola, Zika, and the market tends to rebound pretty rapidly in those previous cases, about 2 to 3 months. Of course, in this case, China is more integrated and a bigger part of the global economy. So really the question that the markets are asking themselves is how much is going to come off of Chinese GDP, China being, 20% of global GDP at this point.
Lucky's Market, a Colorado-based grower that bills itself as offering, quote, organic for the 99%, filed for bankruptcy after it began closing most of its stores. About 3,000 jobs are at stake. Again, after earnings, Juniper Networks trading lower. Juniper down 1.6%. Rambus right now down by 5.6%. And ExxonMobil plans to accelerate drilling off the coast of Guyana at an oil discovery that holds billions more barrels than previously thought. Again, recapping, stocks lower. Gold up 0.8%. West Texas Intermediate crude down 2.7%. And the S&P falling 1.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, we are up to date. Thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar, along with Jason Kelly. Our guest at this hour, Antoine Drian, chairman of Triago. Antoine, I feel like a day doesn't go by, a week doesn't go by, where there is certainly some concern about the growing power of the private markets in which private equity plays. What does the private equity industry, what's on their mind? What do they need to be concerned about in regards to maybe future legislation or regulation?
There's going to be more regulation because there's going to be more people involved and more, more of the retail side. So there is going to be more. There's already a lot, actually. And I think this is an industry where LPs play a big role. LPs investors in this asset class are, big pension funds or other institutions of the same type. And they come with their own regulation. And it's actually quite tough.
Right.
And they're upping the pressure, it sounds like, right? I mean, they're demanding more transparency around fees, around the ultimate investments that funds make, right?
Yeah, I mean, they want to understand what their money is used for and where they invest, et cetera, just to make sure that they can, invest with the same groups over and over. So yes, they are doing that.
So in terms of anything new that might come down, how do you see it? What specifically might come down as more regulation on the industry?
More transparency for sure.
What does that mean? Like in terms of reporting or like what?
Yeah, more reporting, more thought behind valuations. It's already much better than 10, 15 years ago. 10, 15 years ago, you had different prices for the same asset bought at the same time.
Right.
In different reports. Today, you pretty much have the same number for one main reason, and it's called the secondary market. Mm-hmm. If a fund trades on the market and the discount is huge compared to others because marks are way up there, that's one reason to look very closely at your numbers.
And what about the political side? I mean, we are in a U.S. presidential election year. We've had Elizabeth Warren and others come out and call out private equity specifically and by name. She's talked about Blackstone and others. How seriously are the private equity managers taking that? How seriously should they take it in your estimation?
I think they are. I've read the word scapegoat somewhere today. I think they have to be aware that this is coming. We had that in Europe already a few years ago. Right. So, I mean, as a European, I know what it means.
And did it change behavior in Europe?
I think it changed the way that private equity players were describing themselves and their language, and they put a lot of they put a lot of work into showing the people how many jobs they were creating, what value they were bringing to the market, etc. So they were doing a good job in showing people that they were not bad.
Right.
Well, I think that's what's hard about private equity, the industry, right? There's contrasts. I mean, I think there's that side where they make investments that other folks would not even touch, certainly not the traditional banking world or financial world or even, the public market. So there's that service. And then there's the other that feels like buy a property, clean it out, get rid of all the costs, sell it, make a profit, move on. So, there's that message that, and maybe there is a little bit of both of that going on.
Well, at the end of the day, I think that private equity has indeed created a lot of jobs and a lot of value, and I think many studies showed that. There are obviously a few counterexamples of private equity shops that didn't behave very well. But if you look at it deeply, I mean, it's really a small number of firms and people. The vast majority are doing a great job in providing, again, value to their investors and to companies they're owning.
And yet, going back to something you said, they do have a public relations problem to a large extent, because Elizabeth Warren can catch a lot of attention, and maybe it's the power of the language and the power of the rhetoric, but the narrative does, this goes back to a previous presidential election where Mitt Romney, suffered pretty mightily and it may have lost the election, owing to that association.
I agree 100%. I think that they all have to make sure that their communication is getting better and that they actually tell people what they're doing, and people will understand that this is okay.
Right. Well, it'll be interesting to see, too, if private equity can get ahead and be a part of at least this movement, it feels like, to companies and investors acting in a much more holistic way. Right. And not just thinking about the end investor. Antoine Giron, always a treat to catch up with you, chairman of Triago. You can check out online his outrageous predictions for private equity in 2020.
And some not so outrageous.
They're not so outrageous. And they tend to come at least partially true, some of them. So check that out. Always grateful to him for stopping by amid his world travels.
All right, coming up, we've got certainly a very topical discussion, has to do with football and concussions. So we're going to talk with the founder of Extreme Performance Lab, joining us on the phone from the home of the Super Bowl this year. First up, though, let's get back to world and national news headlines and to Bob Moon. Hey, Bob.
Carol, did the pilot of Kobe Bryant's helicopter lose sight of the danger? There's word today his aircraft had been cleared to fly in poor weather, but not the dense clouds it entered before it crashed. Right up until the final moments, aviation safety expert John Cox says it seems roads and landmarks were visible.
When you listen to the conversations between air traffic control and the pilot, it was clear that the pilot could see the roads below him, both the 101, the 118, and the 5, and so he had visual reference to the ground.
The Sikorsky chopper was flying under rules that mandate the pilot to maintain visual contact with the ground. But in the final minute, flight data show it almost certainly climbed into fog. Bryant, his daughter, and 7 others all died in the crash. President Trump's lawyers turned to the charge. He obstructed the investigation into his alleged abuse of power. Live from Capitol Hill, Bloomberg's Irv Chapman has the latest. Irv.
Bob, Deputy White House Counsel Patrick Philbin defended the president's executive privilege to keep his advisors from testifying.
It's necessary to have confidentiality in communications and deliberations in order to have people provide their candid advice to the president. If you want to have good decision-making, there has to be that zone of confidentiality.
Philbin said invoking a right recognized by constitutional precedent can't be an impeachable offense, and Congress should not be able to threaten impeachment if a president refuses to turn over documents. Bob?
Irv Chapman, live on Capitol Hill. Thank you. Global news, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Are you interested in...
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run.
Mix it. Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Hand off Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season.